great job on your presentation. Now we'd like to introduce Sister Dala, who's going to make the presentation on Ramadan. Dala El-Ubaidi is a Birmingham native and attends Birmingham Southern College. She is a senior biology major on the pre-medical track and a member of the Harrison Honors Program. In addition to holding many leadership positions on campus, she actively participates in community service and is a member of the Birmingham Interfaith Human Rights Committee. In her spare time, Dala enjoys spending time with her family and engaging in comparative religion studies. She's currently in the process of applying to medical school as she hopes to pursue a career in medicine upon graduating college. Dala, you have the floor.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. So before we get started, I'd just like to thank Mr. Farooq for putting this event together, and for Mr. Seydu for all his hard work. I'm really honored that they asked me to give this presentation today. So as I was saying, I'm really glad to be able to share what we as Muslims feel is a very special time for us. We're currently in the month of Ramadan, and it's been 14 days of fasting so far. So, I'm just really excited to be able to talk a little bit more about it. And so the goal of today's presentation is to sort of give like a pretty comprehensive overview for what this month is about. So we'll focus on some of the more practical aspects, as well as really what we feel is the most significant part of the month, which is like the building the sense of spirituality. So we'll go ahead and get started. So for those of you, you may or may not have heard about Ramadan, but it's basically the name of the month. And it's the month in which Muslims all around the world are fasting. And each year it falls on a different day. And as you'll see here in this diagram, the way we determine when the month starts is with the sighting of the new moon. So as I'll explain on the next slide, we follow a lunar calendar. And so basically what that means is that each year Ramadan is on a different date. And so our lunar calendar is compared to the traditional Gregorian calendar that we follow is 10 days shorter, and that's why each year Ramadan falls on a different day. And so this year it started June 6th, which was 2 Mondays ago. Last year, for example, it started June 16th. So each year it goes back 10 days. And like I said, it's the name of a month. It's the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, which in Arabic is called the Hijri calendar. And that's basically sort of how it works. And so this month is special for several different reasons, but I sort of want to start off with explaining the historical significance of this month for Muslims. And according to Muslim tradition and belief, this is when the Prophet Muhammad first received revelation, and so this marks the beginning of his prophethood. And so this verse from the Quran mentions the fact that it was within the month of Ramadan that the Prophet received his first revelation. And according to Muslim belief, I'll share this story. This is a very sort of commonly told story within our tradition. The Prophet Muhammad lived in Mecca, which is in modern-day Saudi Arabia. It is Islam's holy city. And so he sort of had this habit of, sort of taking time to leave the city and just spending time contemplating and pondering the meaning of life. There were a lot of things within his society that, were not, there was a lot of injustice and things that he sort of really questioned, and he would sort of think about that there had to be some higher meaning and higher purpose in life. And so he would visit this cave that was on the outskirts of the city. And so one of the nights that he was there, he's visited by the angel Gabriel, as the story has it. And so the angel asks him to read, and he responds by saying, "I can't read." And the angel says again, "Read," and he gives the same response, I can't read. The third time the angel says read, that is when the angel recites the first few verses of the Quran. So again, this is one of the reasons why this month is important. It marks the beginning of Muhammad, of his prophetic mission. This is a good place to sort of, even though our focus today is on fasting, it's a good place to sort of give a broader overview of Islam, the faith itself. And so usually a good place to start are the 5 pillars. These are very foundational aspects of the faith and are recognized by all Muslims. And so we don't have time to go into each one in depth today, but I'll sort of just highlight sort of important aspects of each pillar. And so the first pillar, as you see here, is the Shahada. It translates to testimony of faith. And it's the affirmation in the belief of the one true God, and that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the prophet of God. And then the second pillar is prayer. Muslims have 5 prayers throughout the day. These are very sort of structured prayers that can either be done alone or with a congregation. It just sort of depends. The third pillar is the zakah, which is translated as almsgiving. This is a mandatory charity that's given once a year. It's 2.5% of one's savings, so that's how we determine how much money we have to give. The fourth pillar, which is our focus for today, is fasting, known as Som in Arabic. And so Ramadan is known as the month of fasting. We're fasting throughout this whole month. The last pillar is the Hajj. It's the pilgrimage, the visit to the holy site of Islam known as the Kaaba. You may have seen a picture of it. It's a black cubicle structure. And so the hope is that Muslims will visit this site at least once within their lifetime. That's the requirement. Okay, so as I said, today our focus is fasting, and so it's not fasting for 30 straight days without anything. I mean, that's physically impossible. No one can do that. But we're fasting throughout the days. So the way that this fast works is that we're abstaining from food, drink, and any sort of sexual activity from dawn until dusk. And that goes on each day. And so I really like this diagram. It does a really good job of sort of highlighting what a typical day in Ramadan looks like. And so we'll start here at the top, and I'll kind of go work my way around the circle and explain what each part of the day sort of entails. So the first part, as you see, it says eating before dawn, or sahur. Sahur is the meal we eat right before the fast starts. So as I said, our fast starts at dawn, which is actually our first prayer of the day. We have a dawn prayer, and that is around 4:15 or 4:20 these days. So typically people will get up around 4 or 3:30, at least maybe within an hour or 30 minutes before fasting starts, and they'll have a light meal. And, you know, it's sort of nice to just have that meal right before you start a day of fasting. The Prophet himself said there was a lot of blessing in this meal. And so once you have this meal and it's time for the morning prayer, people will pray and then usually go back to sleep unless you have to be at work very early. And then throughout the day, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we're abstaining from any food, drink, or any sort of sexual activity throughout the day. And we're also trying our best to avoid any other sinful behavior, and I'll sort of talk more about that later on in the presentation. So we break our fast at sunset. What typically happens, we have our sunset prayer. So we break the fast with dates and water. We pray the sunset prayer. And then after that, we have our meal, which is called iftar, which literally means fast breaking. And so we have our meal. About an hour or so later, we have our 5th prayer of the day. That's our final prayer. We pray that, and then during the month of Ramadan, after that 5th prayer, we have special prayers known as Taraweeh. It's a really nice time. Usually people like to go to the mosque to pray these prayers. So it's a really, great opportunity for the community and the congregation to get together and perform these prayers together. And so after those prayers, throughout the night, you're allowed to eat and drink. And then I'd just like to mention the fact that there are optional prayers that some people may decide to observe So they're called Qiyam al-Layl, which basically means like getting up kind of later in the night, usually around 2 or 3 a.m. And I mean, it just shows that some people are willing to sacrifice sleep for that more devotional, optional kind of prayer. So as I mentioned, we break our fast with dates and water. To sort of explain that tradition, it's really what the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to do. And so Muslims have observed that tradition until today. Dates were really abundant in the Arabian Peninsula, so that's sort of why dates were chosen. And then I just want to highlight the fact that not everyone is required to fast. I know it seems very intense, especially for people who haven't ever had to fast before. And so the verse that you just saw really mentioned the types of people who are exempt from fasting, and it's those who are sick and are traveling. But there are other exceptions as well that scholars over time have sort of agreed on. And so I'll sort of go through each one and sort of explain what these people are required to do. So as the verse mentioned, those who are sick or traveling, they were expected to make up a like number of days. So basically what you do, for example, if you were sick for 3 days during Ramadan and you couldn't fast, you just wait until Ramadan's over and then you make up 3 days. And then that was actually one of the verses that Jude read earlier. And so the same sorts of rules apply for women who are pregnant or maybe breastfeeding or on their monthly cycles. They just have to make up those days after the month is over. Now for minors, it's not expected that children under 10 would be able to fast. So usually most children will start fasting around 10 or 11. And then the elderly, of course, would not be expected to fast. So instead of, they wouldn't even be able to make the days up. That's not something that, that we would expect for them to have to do. So as opposed to doing that, they would donate a meal to someone who's needy. And it's usually donating a meal to one person as a form of sort of expiation. You can't ever fast, so that's sort of what you would do instead. And then anyone with any sort of mental sort of issue would not be expected to fast anyway. So. Okay, so that's sort of, you can think of this as the second part of our presentation. For the next few slides, I'm really going to highlight the spiritual aspect of Ramadan. As I mentioned, it's a very holy time for Muslims, and I just want to take the chance to sort of highlight why it's so special. So we're going to divide the topics we cover into 2 different categories, internal and external. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this month is supposed to be very spiritual. It's supposed to be an opportunity to renew your relationship with God. And so you can think of it as almost a training session, like an annual boot camp, maybe that gets you ready for the rest of the year. And so the hope is that sort of the lessons that you learn throughout this month, your sense of spirituality would be improved, you'd become more patient, more thankful. So the hope is that you would use all these great lessons that you learned throughout the year and have that mindset. I kind of also like to think about it in this way. If you are going a full month of, with fasting and you realize that, hey, I was able to give up like basic needs like food and water, you'll realize outside of Ramadan that, hey, it is easy for me to give up other bad habits like lying and cheating, and dishonoring your parents, anything else that you're not supposed to be doing anyway. So that's another way of sort of why it can be thought of as a training session. So I want to highlight, going back to our theme of spirituality, I want to highlight what the Quran sort of talks about when it gives the purpose for fasting. And so as Jude read earlier, it says, "O you who believe, fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, so that you may develop taqwa or piety." I'll go in depth about what this term means, taqwa, but I want to sort of highlight first that the Quran is recognizing that fasting is not something that's only unique to our faith tradition. You'll find fasting mentioned within both the Old and New Testament. So we do realize that this was something that other religious communities observed as well. So Islam is just upholding this tradition and realizing that there is value in fasting. And so now I'll go ahead and explain this term. Taqwa is traditionally translated as piety, but if you look at the word in Arabic, we're able to derive a richer sort of meaning from that word. And basically, a better way of thinking about the term is taking necessary precautions to safeguard yourself or to protect yourself. And I'll sort of explain that more with a story from our tradition. So one of the companions of the Prophet asked him to sort of give a better explanation of this term, and his reply to him was, so what did you just do when you walked down a path? A path that had a lot of thorns along it. And he said, well, anytime there's a thorn, I just, avoid it. And he said, exactly, that's what taqwa means. It's taking the necessary precautions to avoid any sort of evil or sin. And so that's really what fasting is supposed to help you develop, this sense of taqwa, this sense of safeguarding yourself. And if you want to sort of think of it like this, it's sort of a combination of your love of God and fear of God, sort of out of awe of Him, that will help you develop this sense of taqwa. I think self-restraint is also a good way to think of it as well. So that's what the Quran really mentions as far as the purpose of fasting. And these are just qualities that come with developing this sense of safeguarding yourself or self-restraint. The hope is that you'll be more patient, more obedient. It's really, like we've mentioned a lot, spirituality is really the focus of this month. So the hope is that you would, become a better person. Other good qualities, you'll be more mindful of the things you do, so you'll develop this sense of accountability in both the worldly and sort of religious sense. So again, just to further develop this idea of spirituality, as I said, it's one of these internal things. It's an abstract concept, so you can't just look at a person that you don't know and say, oh, that person, embodies spirituality. If you knew them pretty well, maybe you could get a better sense. But here are sort of the things we mean when we mention spirituality. So strengthening your connection with God, becoming more humble, becoming more grateful, realizing that you have a higher purpose in life, sort of detaching yourself from the more like materialistic aspects. So that's really what we mean when we say like developing this sense of spirituality. So then on a few slides ago, I mentioned that you could sort of think about the benefits of Ramadan as far as like external benefits. And what I meant by that was more like character building and more worship. So I'll focus on the character building aspect. And like I said with fasting, there is this sense that you are supposed to become more mindful of the things you do. Just because, like I said, when you are giving up food and water, you're really proving to yourself that you do have self-control. So the idea is that hopefully you would be more mindful about your choices and realize that your actions do have consequences. So it is really meant to develop this sense of responsibility. And then hopefully you'll give up like bad habits, you'll become more thankful, you'll realize that you should love others and realize that you have a responsibility to those who are less fortunate. So as I mentioned, worship is a really important aspect of this month. Muslims, as I mentioned, we have those extra prayers that only occur during this month of Ramadan. So that's just another aspect of the worship part of Ramadan. Fasting is itself a form of worship. A lot of people are reading more Quran this month, which is the Holy Scripture of the Islamic faith. So there's also a big opportunity to do a lot of good during this month. It's expected that you would hopefully, serve others or maybe donate money if you don't have the time to go out and serve. So as I mentioned, serving others is an important part of this month. The hope is that once you fast and realize what it's like to be hungry for a day, not only are you supposed to develop this sense of empathy, but hopefully you would act on that that sense of empathy. So instead of just feeling bad for those who don't have as much, you would hopefully donate to a charity or maybe go out and help, maybe work at a soup kitchen or anything just to, help others realize that you do have some sort of sense of what they're going through. So we're sort of in the home stretch of our presentation, but I sort of wanted to mention what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said about the month of Ramadan. He told the people that, this is a very blessed month. Try your best to do as much good. The reward for each act of good works is multiplied during this month. This month, you should be very patient throughout this month. He also mentioned that during this month, the gates of heaven are open, the gates of hell are closed, and that's just really to emphasize that it's supposed to be a very good time. And I also wanted to mention, so I've been really talking about this idea of character building throughout this month. So if you think about it, it's kind of contradictory for someone to be fasting, but then being a terrible person to others, and just not. It has to be that your senses are fasting as well. So what I mean by that is, like, you shouldn't be looking at anything you're not supposed to be looking at. You shouldn't be saying anything that would be hurtful. You should, be trying your best to please your parents. So all these things are expected with a fast. It's not just giving up food and water for a full day. And so I just want to mention, there's this idea that fasting may not be so healthy, but it's been interesting lately with the advancement of medicine that some books have actually highlighted some health benefits of fasting. And so we got some information from Dr. Jack Goldstein's book, Triumph Over Disease by Fasting and Natural Diet. So throughout his book, he highlights several different benefits of fasting. Some of the ones that come to mind, he said that fasting has been linked with increased immune function, longevity, other things he mentioned, like increased insulin sensitivity. So it's just interesting to see that, this is sort of a more religious practice, but it does have health benefits as well. And sort of to conclude, this is a good place to stop. Once Ramadan is over, we actually have a holiday to sort of celebrate the end of that. And this holiday is called Eid al-Fitr, which literally means the festival of breaking the fast. It's a really happy time. The whole community gets together, not just here in Birmingham, but Muslim communities all over the world get together. We have a special congregational prayer that morning. There's a service, so there'll be like a short sermon, and then we all pray together. It's a really, just a good time for people to visit each other. Children usually get new clothes, new toys, so think of it almost kind of like Christmas. And everyone's just really happy, and it feels good to sort of celebrate, a month of fasting. You feel accomplished. And so another thing to highlight is that even though you are celebrating, you should still remember that there are those who are less fortunate and may not be able to have such a good time. They may not have the financial means to get their children new toys.